Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You are listening to Al Mubarak Radio with our official sponsors and partners, Interpal. Brothers and sisters, welcome on this beautiful day of Jum'ah onto a special show we are holding this afternoon with the Saad Foundation. Alhamdulillah, we're going to give you the information that is required and obviously the information behind what is Saad Foundation and their aims and what work they are carrying out, not only in our own community here, but how it should be spread across the United Kingdom. And I've just sent a message out to all of the people out there in mashallah. I know time is very short between Jum'ah, Asr, and then also Asr between Maghrib Salah as well. And also being the day of Jum'ah, keep reciting the Durood and also salutations to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is very, very important. And du'as, remembering and bearing in mind the beautiful hadith that, on the day of Jum'ah, there is an hour in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts du'as. And that a lot of, learned scholars do say is the time between Asr and Maghrib. And by knowing this, okay, then just think all of our needs, okay, that we need for this world and the hereafter is very, very important that we engage ourselves in du'as. Make dua for all the brothers and sisters around the world, the whole ummah, and especially remember those brothers and sisters and families who lost the innocent lives this week in the Pakistan areas of Peshawar as well. Remember them, cast in your du'as. Okay, and we have here from the Saad Foundation, Mr. Ramadan Muhayyuddin. Okay, I hope I pronounced that right. Mr. Ramadan Muhayyuddin, who is the chair of Saad Foundation, and also the website for Saad Foundation is www.saadfoundation.com. Funny enough, okay, I'll be honest with you, I came across Saad Foundation through my family member, my wife, who follows Saad Foundation on Facebook, and she keeps me up to date with what their work is, etc. And then I did have a look because my wife was mentioning that there's two events in our areas, one in the Pakwa Center in the Batley area, and one in Dewsbury as well at the Victoria Suite. Now, obviously, what happened is I then researched. You do your own research on Facebook. I went on the page as well, and then I kind of found it quite interesting. So I got in touch with the team, and they called me back. And alhamdulillah, I did say that after Jummah around this time. So firstly, let's welcome Mr. Ramadan onto Al Mubarak Radio. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Can I firstly say thank you very much for inviting me onto your radio channel. It's a real good opportunity to get the message out to as many people as possible around the work the Saad Foundation is doing in partnership with Hygiene, which is a private company, which I'll tell you about more. But if I can start off with the Saad Foundation and how we started this work, it'll actually be 6 years next Thursday. This coming Thursday, it'll be 6 years. This coming Thursday that an event in my life happened, which made me think things aren't right and things could be better. On the 25th of December 2008, and it was a Thursday, my son went to sleep and he didn't wake up. He passed away in his sleep. And he was 18 years old, and he was a good soul. He didn't do any bad things. And of course, because it was Christmas Day and it's holiday, the GPs aren't working and the coroners aren't working, and etc. So it was difficult to get hold of a professional to give a cause of death. And you've got to understand what happens when somebody dies. When somebody dies and the doctor doesn't give a cause of death, that body belongs to the coroner. The coroner has a statutory responsibility, a duty to ascertain 4 points of law. And what they want to know is who died, where they died, when they died, and how they died. Now, the first three things are quite easy to get the information about. The last item around how they died is the most difficult one. And the coroners rely on the GPs or other medical staff to do that. Of course, sometimes the GPs can't give a cause of death. And so what the coroner then does is reverts to getting a pathologist to do a post-mortem. And when my son died, that's what happened. The coroner's officer said, we're going to have to do a post-mortem. I know exactly what happens in a post-mortem. And if your listeners don't understand what happens in a post-mortem, then come along to our event and we'll tell you. Basically, the body's cut open and everything's taken out. The heart, lungs, liver, spleen, kidneys, the whole lot, and they're all weighed and sliced and samples are taken. The head's cut open, the skull, and the brain's taken out, and again, weighed, samples taken, etc. And then everything's put back into the stomach, and then the body is sewn up as you would sew up a sack. And for those of you, brothers and sisters, who have done wussle on your loved one, bereaved person who's died, you will see what a post-mortem procedure does to the body. And I saw what they did to my son, and I didn't believe it was the right thing. We actually had to wait until the Tuesday for them to do the post-mortem, but we were fortunate enough that we had people in the Leeds community who told us about a procedure which was being done in Manchester at that time. And we pushed the coroner's officer to allow us to take my son to Manchester for his body to be scanned. And we paid at that time £1,200 for his body to be scanned at Manchester. And the doctor there, the radiologist, he said there's nothing wrong with him. We can't find anything in the scan, but we do know how he's died. It's natural causes where the heart stops, an arrhythmia, and that's how you die. That's how everyone dies. You can do a post-mortem, but you won't find anything. The coroner insisted they would still do a post-mortem, which they did, and they didn't find a cause. And then it went to inquest, and the final verdict was natural causes. So immediately I thought, we had my son scanned, they did a post-mortem, and the result was the same. But the actual grief you go through, and when you see what they have done to your loved one, you want to make sure that doesn't happen to other people. And that's when I set up the Saad Foundation. And we are the only charity in the UK that promotes imaging as an alternative to traditional postmortems. And we try and help families through the process of talking to coroners officers, hospitals, etc. And we try and explain to them how to deal with these issues.
Inshallah. So how would you say, okay, the journey from when you've set up, okay, the Saad Foundation to where it is actually now, how much do you think you have moved from? Obviously, everything up first is hard to convince people, to make people understand what your actual goals are. I mean, you've just explained something which you've basically been through with your own member of family. So, how would you say right now where you are, what stage from when you began your Saad Foundation and its aims about the alternatives to postmortem?
You're absolutely right. Nothing comes easy. It comes with hard work. And right from the outset, even when I tried to set up the charity, I had difficulties with the Charity Commission, who didn't understand what we were about and what we were trying to do. And they suggested we join another charity. If we want to help bereaved families, then they said, why don't you just join another charity? There are a lot of charities who do this. And of course, I tried to explain to them that this was something different. And they then requested that I ring them and have a telephone conference with their lawyers. And we had a telephone conference for an hour, and I explained to them exactly what we were trying to achieve. And they said, yeah, absolutely, you're right. Nobody does this. Yes, good luck, off you go. And that's how we got registered status with the Charter Commission. I then realised that the coroners and the experience I'd been through with the Bradford coroner at that time didn't believe this new technology worked, this new process worked. So I engaged with the Department of Health, who at that time had a couple of research projects ongoing, one in Oxfordshire and one in Leicestershire. And that was looking at building an evidence base for imaging as an alternative. And what they were doing, they had professors working where they were doing a post-mortem, and then they were doing the imaging first, then they were doing post-mortems, imaging first, then post-mortem, and comparing the results. And over a period of time, they built up an evidence base. And of course, the other thing you've got to think about is the Iraq and Afghanistan war, when soldiers were coming back, the bodies, when they come from abroad, the coroner has got to give a cause of death, has got to have a cause of death. And of course, scanning was used rather than post-mortems on the bodies. That's what was done. And that obviously also informed professionals around other issues, body arm and things like that as well. So there were projects ongoing, and we joined that group called the Postmortem Forensic Disaster Imaging Group, at looking at building an evidence base to say this works. We went down to the Ministry of Justice at that time and spoke to the junior minister when they were consulting around the Coroners and Justice Act, which would allow coroners to move bodies from their jurisdiction to another jurisdiction to allow services such as scanning to be allowed. That was written into the law, which is now the Act. And also, on top of that, we went to see the chief coroner who was put in place, Peter Thornton QC, and he produced guidance to coroners to say, this is how you should use it. So what we did in the early stages over a period of time was look at how do we influence people, how do we negotiate with people to make coroners understand this works. And after that, we, at the same time, actually, about 3 years ago, we engaged with some private sector organisations to try and look at how we could make this work practically, because it's very expensive. Setting up a whole scanning system is very expensive. And along came a company called iGene, who were a subsidiary company of a company called Info Valley. Info Valley are a Malaysian company. And I remember being sat at my flat some years ago and getting a phone call from a pathologist called Peter Fernandez. And he had been called over to Malaysia because somebody had fallen off a balcony. And what the authorities wanted to know was this person dead when he fell, or did he die as a result of the fall? But they didn't want to post-mortem doing. They wanted to use imaging. Yeah. And of course, Peter Fernandez looked at that, interpreted the imaging, and he could tell straight away that the person died as a result of the fall, because all the bones in their legs and back were broken because they landed on the feet. Right. Yeah. And he said, this is brilliant technology, what they have. They've got special software where they convert it into 3D imaging, and they can slice the body, the skin first, and go deeper and deeper. And they can do all sorts of cross sections and everything else. And of course, iGene linked in with the local authorities, the councils, because the councils actually pay the coroners, and it was the natural way to get in there. And now they've managed to build a centre at Bradford, Sheffield, and Sandwell in Birmingham. And they're looking to build another 22 centres across the country. And what we want to do is promote this service and help people understand how they can access it, what they need to ask for, what the limitations are, and how much it costs, because it does cost the individual.
What would be the cost, okay, for an individual to go through one of these postmortems?
Right. Well, the first thing is what people have got to understand is if somebody dies and they haven't seen a GP for 28 days, and it has changed. Some people will say 14 days. The law is now 28 days. If the GP hasn't seen the patient for 28 days and they weren't under any medical care, then the GP will probably not give a cause of death, which means that the coroner will look at the medical history, etc., and will probably ask a pathologist to perform a post-mortem. Firstly, the family's got to understand that. So the first protocol is always the GP. Will the GP give a cause of death? If the GP says no, then they've got to speak to the coroner's officer and say, we want to opt for a scan. So we want imaging rather than an intrusive post-mortem. Now, what the coroner's officer will explain is that you won't always get a result. You will get a result 80% of the time. So 80% is pretty good odds. And what hygiene do is they will do the scan, and of course, they'll then have that interpreted with the radiologist, and a report will go through to the coroner. The coroner will look at it and then either accept it or not accept it. It costs, if there's a cause of death, hygiene charge £500 plus VAT. So if they get a cause of death, you'll get charged £500 plus VAT, which is £600. If hygiene don't get a cause of death, then they don't charge you anything, because then obviously the coroner will say, I want to do a post-mortem, an intrusive one. Now, in some places like Sandwell in Birmingham, the council have said, we will pay for this. So individuals living in Sandwell, the community of Sandwell, don't have to pay for it. Whereas here in West Yorkshire or Bradford, and we are in Kirklees, Calderdale are all covered by Bradford. Bradford Council have said, we will pay for under 18s, but we won't pay for adults. So adults will get charged. So we have
Is that the charge of £500
plus VAT?
So
£600. Yeah,
right.
£600. That's the charge. Now, what we're saying, and I did a presentation to Kirklees Cabinet Council, and I intend to go around the other councils as well, is to say across West Yorkshire, if all of 5 councils put in £200,000 each, it will pay for everybody across West Yorkshire. So anybody who gets a scan will be for free. It's £200,000 per council, and we've got Calderdale, Kirklees, Leeds, Bradford and Wakefield. So that's not much really, if you think about it, with the amount of money they spend in other areas.
So what would you say the support from our communities is, and what would you say regarding the awareness of what exactly the Work Saad Foundation is carrying out? What would you say the awareness in our communities, especially here, Batley, Dewsbury, we're speaking about, plus other, like Asian areas, like
Yes.
all over the Lancashire areas,
Yeah.
Midlands and down south as well?
Yeah. Some people know about it, but not many. Not many.
Right.
And I think it's like anything else. And if I would just highlight that, we all have one thing in common. Doesn't matter what race you're from, doesn't matter what background you're from, what religion you're from, what faith, belief, culture, doesn't matter. We all have one thing in common, and that thing is mortality.
Yeah.
Death will come to us all
Yes.
at some stage. It's the only certainty in life. People only think about it when it happens to them,
Yes.
or to their, a member of their family or friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time they think about death, and people don't naturally want to talk about death. But it's important. It's important to understand that. It's important to know what's available. It's important to know how to access it. So what we're trying to do is go out into the communities and tell people how this system works, what the limitations are, how much it will cost them, and everything else. So although we're doing these events at Packwell on the 27th of December at 5 o'clock till 7, and then at Victoria Suite in Savilletown on the 4th of January, again between 5 o'clock and 7. We are doing another event in Birmingham, but we will do events where people want us to do events. I've already had a request from a mosque in Thornley Lees, and we'll be going there to do this event as well. So we will go wherever, because it's important that as many people know about this as possible, because then when something happens, they know what to do.
Yes, definitely. When's the most recent of this type of uh, post-mortem? When's the recent one that has been done?
A scan.
Yeah, a scan.
We've had a few in the last few weeks. We've had uh, an instance where a young man died in a road traffic collision, and he wasn't. He didn't have a traditional post-mortem. He was scanned, and there was a cause of death. Which you would say, yes, you're going to get a cause of death in a road traffic collision,
Yes.
and that's what we're saying. We're saying actually it shouldn't just be about sudden deaths, which are natural in the sense that it's not a road traffic collision, it's not a suicide. We're saying that actually in suicides, road traffic collisions, you can still do a scan. You should be able to still do a scan because you can do the toxicology part by taking blood,
Yeah.
but you don't need to cut them up. So there's that. In the last couple of weeks, there's been a couple of instances where we've had cases go through and they've got a cause of death. There's been a case from Halifax recently, and there's been a case from Huddersfield as well recently, very
So,
recently.
example, because like you say, death can come at any time. I mean, this is something what people are least expecting.
Yes.
Okay? So, example, if something like this was to occur to anybody's families, to is there a system where they have to contact somebody, or is there a way that they have to like make a booking, an appointment, or how is this a whole setup dealt?
Okay, it depends on the circumstances of the death, obviously. And the first thing I'll say is if it's a suspicious death, then the police will get involved straight away. And it's pretty much out of our hands then because they will deal with it in a certain way.
Right.
If it's a non-suspicious sudden death, which is the one which is the sort of grey area which causes complications in the sense that it was unexpected, but it's not suspicious. So, say for example, somebody dies at home unexpectedly, the member of family would probably ring 999. They would ask for an ambulance. The ambulance would turn up. The paramedics would either take the person to hospital if they were still alive. If they were dead, they would pronounce life extinct there. The paramedics would do that. And they'd probably take the body to the hospital mortuary. From there, the coroner's officers would get a report and then they would decide what happens from there. They would speak to the GP. They would look at the medical records. If the GP says, I will give a cause of death, no problem, the paperwork will be signed off and the body will be released to the family. If the GP says, I can't give a cause of death, then the coroner's officer will say, we need to do a post-mortem. And the family should straight away contact the coroner's officer and say, what position are we in? What are you going to do? But the one thing coroner's officers get fed up about is 10, 15 people from one family ringing.
Yeah.
Because, the culture we have is that everybody wants to help.
Yeah.
And everybody gets and tries to ring. And everybody feels they're more influential than anybody else.
Yeah.
So the thing to do is always have one single point of contact. Nominate one person and say, this person will keep contact and maintain contact with the coroner's officer. Then the coroner's officer won't get fed up as well. And then the coroner's officer will keep in touch with that person, keep them updated as to what's going on. If a person is still alive and they get taken to hospital and then they die in hospital, if they die within 24 hours of being admitted, the hospital have got a duty to refer that death to the coroner. Doesn't necessarily mean to say the coroner will insist on a post-mortem because actually somebody at hospital, the consultant or the doctor might give a cause of death and then there's no need, but they are under duty to refer it to the coroner because they died within 24 hours. And then there's a special form called Form A, which needs filling in by the coroner's office and sent through as well to the hospital and to the registrar who registers the death. So there are administrative things to do. But if somebody dies in hospital, then again, you should speak to the doctor in hospital and ask them if they will give a cause of death. If they say no, we can't, then your next protocol is the coroner's officer, and speak to the coroner's officer and say, what are you doing? What are the plans? And if they say we want to do a post-mortem, say, well, we want to opt for imaging, a scan rather than an intrusive
So
post-mortem.
you have that choice.
Well, the choice, we're saying you should have a choice.
Right.
And you do have a choice, but the mentality of some coroners is, no, it's my body, I will do what I want. But you do have a choice. And I'll give you an example of this. In London, there's a coroner who doesn't like scanning. And there's been 2 deaths in the Muslim community, and there's been a death in the Jewish community there, where this coroner has said, I'm going to go to a post-mortem, intrusive post-mortem. And the Muslim community have got an injunction against the coroner to stop the coroner from doing that. You've got to go to court and get an injunction. You can do that the same day.
Right.
So let's stop the coroner. One case went to judicial review, and the judge listening to that was, one of the judges listening was Peter Thornton, QC, who's the chief coroner, who actually told the coroner that you should allow this. So if the coroner says no, there are options. If the case is suitable, you can take out an injunction.
Right.
You can take them to judicial review. It's actually in the law. It's written in the Coroners and Justice Act that the family's choice should be taken into consideration. So the family says, I want a scan, and the case is suitable, the coroner should give that consideration and say, yes, okay.
Right. Okay. So, there's a lot obviously behind all of this.
Yes, there is.
There's a lot, and people really have to understand what screening and all of this way of post-mortem is.
Yes.
And also because you see, if you're not prepared, if you have knowledge, then at the time it makes things much easier.
It does.
It does. I mean, for your own members of your family, and like yourself, you witnessed something within your family, which then gave you the strength to start up Saad Foundation.
Yes.
And this is the reason, we are here also, that, we want to work with everybody who is trying to get, something. And this is a good medium.
Yes.
Because a lot of people will be hearing this up and down the country. And hopefully it being on YouTube after our interview as well, you can pass the links on so people can know. Now, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, in contact you, what are the ways of contacting yourself and the Saad Foundation?
Well, they can. We're on Twitter at Saad Foundation. You can send me a direct message on that. You can send me a request on Facebook. We're on Facebook. We've got
Facebook is a like page, isn't it?
A like page, yeah.
So you like the page on Saad Foundation.
Saad Foundation.
Right.
We're on. We've got a website which has got contact details, and it's got an email address as well. So the email address is Ramzan .Mohyuddin. So that's MOHAYUDDIN @outlook.com. You can always give me a ring, and we've got on the website, the phone number's on the website. And actually, if you go on the website, you can download a card and you can print it off, which you can carry. It's like a donor card, but it's not a donor card. It basically says that if you die, you don't want an intrusive post-mortem, and you want another procedure, either MRI, CT, or any other procedure which will give a cause of death. Because times move on, and scanning might not be in the future, might not be the thing. It might be something else. So technology moves on, gets better all the time. So there are many ways of contacting us. We're willing to go anywhere in the country to do presentations. It's important because then people can ask as many questions as they want. And you can read a website, you can read Facebook, but there are always questions, and it's always better for a face-to-face discussion.
Definitely. And I want to ask you the one final thing is, just like your setup, how many are there in the whole of the United Kingdom?
Supporting less intrusive? You mean charities?
No, I mean this the you know what,
Imaging centre.
Yeah, imaging.
Hygiene.
Yes.
Hygiene, as I say, Hygiene have got a purpose-built facility in Bradford, which is on Burnham Avenue, which is next to the mortuary, right? So that's purpose-built. They've got another purpose-built site in Sheffield at the
Okay.
Medical Legal Centre.
Right.
They've got another site at Sandwell Crematorium in Birmingham.
Okay.
They'll have a site soon in Cambridge. They'll have a couple of sites in London, and they're working up and down the country. So there will be 22 sites at least. There might even be more than that.
Yeah, but for us around here, we've got definitely one in Bradford.
Bradford,
which
yeah.
is only 6 miles away, really, isn't
Well,
it?
Bradford will cover the whole West Yorkshire.
Yeah. Now,
You know.
sure, times when post-mortems are done, even the normal post-mortem, your body gets to around Bradford anyway.
Yes, it
isn't
goes
it?
to Bradford Mortuary.
Yeah, mortuary, because I've been there a few times myself. So, I mean, for this, you know, brothers and sisters, what my request would be is in your communities, okay, you know, talk to the mosques, talk to your, you know, responsible leaders of your localities and get in touch with the Saad Foundation so that, you know, you can invite them through their Facebook, their Twitter, and their website, get in contact with them so that they can come. And this is what I would say supporting is, okay, is to call them and let them do their presentation. And like, you know, Mr. Ramzan has just said, that, you know, any questions, because a lot of people will have questions, then ask your questions. They have the answers as well. And inshallah, this way they can only, you know, get their work out to more people, and more people like, you know, our own families. We would not want to see, you know, bodies like, you know, earlier, like being, you know, put together as sacks after a post-mortem, etc. And I'm sure a lot of families would not want their family members to go through that procedure anyway. So this is a good opportunity to get in touch with Saad Foundation. And again, just a reminder, in our localities of Batley and Dewsbury, at the Pakwa Centre, it's on
27th of December.
27th of December,
At
around
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock till about 7 p.m.
Yes.
And then in Dewsbury, Victoria Street on the...
Victoria Suite
Yeah.
if it's off Mill Street.
Yes.
On the 4th of January,
Right.
again, 5 o'clock till 7.
5 o'clock till 7 o'clock. So everybody around our areas especially should make a little, and it's all for males and females.
Anybody,
Yeah.
anybody's welcome. I mean, if I could say a couple of things which I think communities need to think about is, firstly, in respect to the payment, many people have death committees. So you need to speak about death committees and have this cost incorporated in that. The other thing is maybe mosques need to come together, and membership needs to pay for that, for this, you know, because a lot of mosques have a lot of funds. A lot of burial committees have a lot of funds. And actually, £600 isn't a lot of money. And maybe, you know, the money needs to come out of there. If you look at the Jewish community, the synagogues pay for this. The individuals don't pay for it. The synagogues pay for it. And then the second thing is, people have got to decide what's more important. Is it more important to get somebody buried as soon as possible, or is it more important to prevent a person getting cut up? You know, so what do you want? Do you want somebody to be buried as soon as possible, and you're not bothered if they get a post-mortem, or would you prefer that the body was intact and they were scanned and they were buried? So this is something which people have got to decide what is more, you know, important.
Right. Okay. And Jazakumullah khair, Mr. Rizwan, coming from Saad Foundation, the chair of Saad Foundation. Brothers and sisters, a big Jazakumullah khair for everybody listening out there. Make sure on the dates mentioned and to keep up to date with all Saad Foundation. Then, you know, today everybody uses the social networks. Give them a like on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. I'm sure they will keep you updated. And, you know, regarding the work, you know, support is very, very important for everybody. Now, I can tell Mr. Ramzan as well. I can remember where I first met him, because I never forget a face. This is one thing about me. And I did say to you when you first came, I've seen you somewhere. It was in Snowdon Masjid.
Yes.
Mr. Yaqub on the receiver. And we had the discussion a few years ago now.
Yes.
And when I saw you, I said, I've seen the face somewhere. But alhamdulillah, that's where we met as well, I think the first time as well, mashallah. So it's really lovely to see you continuing this beautiful work. And inshallah, like I say, Al Mubarak Foundation, we've been here now a few months, but we've been operating for a good 5 years. A lot of people do know of us, throughout the United Kingdom and also abroad. So inshallah, this message, inshallah, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will go out further, and you get all the support that you need. And inshallah, it makes, any end of the day, lives easier for the families who has lost their loved ones. So a big jazakumullah khair for coming on to our show. Jazakumullah khair. Brothers and sisters, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless each and every one of us. Remember, we're going to be going off air right now. It's coming up to 3 p.m. Remember, everybody, in your precious and pious duas. Inshallah, we will be back on air this evening with the Real Talk Show around 8 p.m. and then also the guest show with Qari Yusuf Al Badr as well. So until then, this is Mr. Al Mubarak signing out. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fi amanillah.